guys, welcome to my channel. So for my first video, I am going to be talking about actually a blog post that I wrote back when I had a blog, which I will link below, and it's also in the About Me of my blog. That was my most read blog post, and I found it really interesting that it was my most read blog post because the topic was dating in the US versus dating in Chile. This is kind of a funny topic for me to talk about now, just because I am recently married and I've been with my now husband, Chilean husband, for almost 5 years. But although I did write the original blog post, when I was already in a relationship, I feel that this topic really does relate to a lot of people, whether you date interculturally or not, but especially dating interculturally can be really challenging with language and culture differences. So that is what the video is going to be about. So I just want to share a disclaimer here. This is kind of a video that I would suggest taking with a grain of salt. This was my experience as a cisgender heterosexual woman dating in Chile. I understand because that isn't everyone's experiences. Maybe this might not apply to everyone, but just take it with a grain of salt and hopefully there might be something you will relate to regardless. That I want to talk about is that in Spanish there are different ways of expressing like, love, interest, especially when it comes to dating and in general. In English, there are just a few, pretty much just two. I like you, I love you. We're kind of like simple people, I guess, just jumping right from one to the other. And I wasn't aware of that in Spanish it's me cae bien, I like you, but in a platonic way. Me gustas, I like you, I want to keep getting to know you. Me encantas, I really, really like you. Te quiero, for some people means I love you, and it's what they say to show romantic love. And to some people, it just kind of means I care about you. So it really depends. In my specific case, I, obviously say te amo to my husband and to my family, but to my friends I say te quiero. But I'm not the person to define this. There's a lot of different definitions here. But the saves last for, the best for last, I guess you could say, is that te amo is a more romantic and profound way to say I love you. So why am I going over all of this? A lot of us gringos, learn Spanish in a school setting, and we might just say te amo instead of saying te quiero, and that could maybe be kind of a lot to our significant others. And so I think it's interesting just in the Spanish language that there's so many different words to describe your feelings. Something else aside from that I found, maybe because there's so many levels, it just kind of like increments slowly. And I like you to I'm in love with you to I love you, they're big jumps, so they might take longer to say those things. Another difference that I kind of found from dating in Chile versus dating in the US is that in my experience, guys in the US, it was almost like an uncool thing to say that they liked you. So they were always trying to come off like they didn't like you, and that was weird and it was hard to read. On the other extreme, in my experience, when I was single dating in Chile, Chilean guys would come off right at the bat and say, me gustas, I like you, me encantas. And I felt so overwhelmed by that with so many years of American guys just not even being honest about how they feel or being expressive. And it was easy, or it was difficult for me a lot of times to not overread into that, and that means that they like you, but maybe it's not a serious thing, although they might seem really intense. So I would say that in that case, Chileans were more expressive than American guys, but it doesn't really mean, or didn't really mean, that it was something that was going to turn into something serious. So my next point actually is kind of a more of a cultural observation, and obviously it's, everyone knows that the US is a very individualistic culture compared to Chile, which some could argue cada día más, each day, is becoming more individualistic with its influences from the US. But it's still very much a collectivistic culture at its core, as in the group is definitely really present and important, especially when it comes to family. That's my next topic. So I guess my next two topics can be kind of blended together here. So the first is that I felt that compared to being in my young 20s in the US, where a lot of the conversation and the recommendations for what adults would recommend young 20 people are to focus on yourself. And I think that kind of reflects a lot of the individualistic culture of the US, that follow your own path, do your own thing. And in Chile, I was really surprised to find a lot of young people who were in very long-term relationships with their high school sweetheart, you could say. Even the idea of a high school sweetheart is kind of not really, you know, it's kind of extinct, to be honest, in the US. So I found that really interesting and surprising. I, back home in the US, didn't know a lot of young 20-year-olds or 20-somethings that were in a very serious 5 to 7, 9-year relationship. That is not something you commonly see. And I feel like with Generation Z, even less. So I would say my point here, I know I'm rambling, I could talk forever about this, is that I felt that there was a lot of social pressure to be in a relationship, and that kind of influenced the more traditional dating of being in a monogamous relationship, whereas in the US, it felt almost off trend or out of trend to be in a relationship, to have a monogamous type of boyfriend girlfriend, girlfriend girlfriend, boyfriend boyfriend type of deal, and it was more of just like a hookup culture. I personally don't think either one is wrong. I think it really depends on the person, but it felt interesting that in the US it was like, it felt impossible, and I felt like no one wanted to actually have a serious relationship, and it felt almost like lame, kind of going back to how it felt lame to say that they liked you, to go in Chile where it was almost like feeling a lot of judgment and scrutiny, I think especially as a woman, not being in a relationship. So that was kind of one difference there. I think something to note about that is that divorce was recently legalized in Chile not even 20 years ago. It was legalized in Chile in 2004, and in the US, if I'm not wrong, it was legalized in 1969. So that influences probably a lot of the actual dating culture that we see. It might be a reason why there's such traditional type of relationship and dating culture that maybe our people who are millennials, boomer parents grew up with. And so I found that really interesting and quite shocking, actually. The last point, kind of a difference of dating culture in the US versus dating culture in Chile, is this kind of, I laugh because it's funny now, but when you date a Chilean, you're really dating their family. You know, once you're actually boyfriend and girlfriend or official and pololeando, which is what they say in Chilean and Spanish, you know, there's a very big importance placed on spending time with their family, very long lunches, typically on Sundays, asados, they love their barbecues, which are all really great things, and I love that Chilean families are so close-knit and that they really enjoy spending time with each other. It's just very different, at least from my family experience, as in, I think overall, a lot of family relationships that parents have with their adult children, or that as they become adults, they have more of their own life, and especially when you're dating someone, if it's in the new phases, even if you're officially, you know, just seeing each other, you don't really, the family isn't just like my big fat group wedding here. And so that felt kind of intense for me at first, just because, you know, this was also my first real relationship. So I didn't really have anything to go off of it. But based on my, you know, friends in the past in the US, this wasn't really their experience either in the US. And so I think that with that there's definitely a nuance and a difference when it does come to dating in different cultures who have culturally, you know, individualistic, collectivistic. I know that's something that I spoke about before, but I feel with families definitely has an impact. Just because collectivistic, it's kind of how you see the group, your relation to the group, and individualistic is about the individual and their journey and them finding themselves. And so it just was interesting, and I feel like it does come up a lot of times with friends that I have that are, especially gringas, dating Chileans. There can be a lot of differences in dating and even in relationships when they're two different cultures and they have two different family dynamics. So I would say that this more so comes up around dating when you're actually exclusively dating, as there are a lot of compromisos, like social commitments that are familiar, are family related. I find that a really beautiful part of living in Chile, but I also find that it's important when there are two people from two different cultures to set boundaries and to have limits and to express a lot of times that this might not be your culture and maybe you might need to have more time for yourself and your friends and your activities. So I would say that would be the last thing that I think is different. That was it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed my rants and my experience. If you have dated interculturally, dated abroad, or better yet, if you dated in Chile, please leave a comment down below and let me know about your experience. And I will also, again, link that blog post so you can read that. I read through it now and giggled because I felt like it was funny recollection of that time in my life, so hopefully you have the same reaction. If you're interested in this type of video, here you can find my most recently updated video, and please hit subscribe so you can be along for more content. And as always, this is a community, so please don't hesitate to leave a comment on any type of content that you'd be interested in seeing. Great.